Greetings. Welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. This is the 208th episode of Conversations with Tony Mobley. That's right. We have done 208 episodes, including today. This conversation uses the TV broadcast software Mimo Live and Zoom. ConversationWithTonyMobley.com is our website, and we are also using Mukana. It is an interactive chat that is courtesy of Alex Lindsay and 090. It allows you to ask your questions, and those questions can be voted up and down, up or down. If you choose not to use Mukana, well, you can use the YouTube chat, and that's very fine with us. Again, I just want to share with each and every one of you who are watching today, I am having a panel conversation of 3 with Dr. Connie Davidson and Dr. John Ittelson. But we are going to talk mostly about The Bashful Ladybug by Dr. Davidson. And we're going to get right into it. And so the very first question is, who are you, Dr. Davidson?
Oh, that's a really great question. I am a grandmother, I am an educator, and I am an author. And that last part is 3 weeks old because this has been on my mind for a long time. And I was inspired. My purpose, my I feel every person has a purpose for being on this planet. And in this particular instance, my purpose is to encourage my granddaughter and those who are like my granddaughter, small children, to understand that they're courageous. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote The Bashful Ladybug. But as an educator, because I always come from the platform of being an educator, as an educator, it is my responsibility to prepare young people to go out into the world, whatever that happens to look like, whether I'm actually teaching them a lesson, teaching their teachers so they understand how to relate to their students, or teaching my granddaughter how to be something that she's fearful of or bashful about. So that prompted me to write this book, which is The Bashful Ladybug. And
Hold
it's
it up
about
just a
her.
little bit
A little
higher.
higher? Is that does that work? Is this
Yes,
working?
that's great.
Okay, because I can't
Thank
see.
you.
All I can see is you, Tony. So I don't know what's going on. I can't see me
Thank
at
you.
all. So I wrote that for her because she's a very shy 5-year-old, and
Okay.
I saw her. I said, I think I'll write a story about coming of age. In that, when you're 5 and the world is real big and you're really small, as a child, as adults, we forget what it is like when the world is really big around us. And this book feeds into social emotional awareness for her and for those who would read this book to her, so or others who are, as they read it to their grandchildren or classrooms, where they understand it's okay for you to be little and it's okay for things to be big, but you bring light. You bring a light into the world just by being in this world. And although in the book there are all these different kinds of bugs who are all these different colors and they're all playing, they'll play with you too, because you just have to have a little effort. Because if you go out there and say, "Hi, how are you?" they'll say, "Hi, how are you too?" And you'll find out that you can do anything if you put your mind to it.
Wow. Can you talk about your creative journey? Because, for a person just to decide, you know what, I need to write a book for my granddaughter. I mean, there has to be a creative spirit that didn't just start when your granddaughter came along. So talk about that, please.
Well, COVID did a lot of things for a lot of people because we had a lot of time on our hands and we were all stuck in our houses. And at first I thought I would I would bake sourdough bread. Without, I will never in life bake sourdough bread again. I was on Facebook. My friend made some sourdough bread. I said, I can do that. And after the disastrous sourdough bread and that entire journey to call a bakery and wait in line in my car to get the mother and then come home and then put it in with the water and then put it in with the flour and turn it over and knead it and throw it in the refrigerator. It was like having a baby. You had to check on it all the time. And by the time it was finished, it was the worst tasting bread in the world. Well, it was I was also at the same time, my husband and I were the leaders of the committed couples group at our church. And our minister said, will you please stay in touch with the members because we don't want them to fall away from the church during this time period. So I started writing about what was happening in my life on an almost daily basis. So I wrote a short story about this sourdough bread, making sourdough bread. And the moral of that story is you can't do everything just because somebody else is doing it better than you. So if somebody else does it better than you, just go ahead and admit it and then do something else that you're good at. But I didn't stop baking bread. I just didn't bake sourdough anymore. So
Wow.
that was the journey. Another one was I was in my garden and something was eating my because everybody gardened at the same time. So something was eating my plants at night. And I went to buy all this stuff to kill what was in the garden. And this lady said, "You don't have to buy that stuff. Just get a bucket and a can of any soda can and put peanut butter on it and put a stick and then 3/4 of it with water. Just go ahead and do that and put a stick and they'll crawl up that stick, try to get to that peanut butter, fall in the water and they'll die." And she was right. Rats died in the water. That was a really good thing. But this possum kept coming around to my house every night, making all this noise. And so I wrote about that. And I just started writing about things that were happening in our lives and trying to encourage people. Because when I was a little girl and I was in the second grade, my second grade teacher told me I couldn't write. She flat
Wow.
out told me, "You can't write." I'd written a thank you note to the police department for, letting us go down to the fire station. And so for years, I didn't write. And what I didn't know is I also had dyslexia. And that's why I had a hard time reading. So school was never fun for me because I was already told I can't write. And I was having a really hard time reading. And then when I was a junior, uh, one of my classmates, she said, I want you to read Dandelion Wine this weekend. I said, I don't want to read that book. She said, just read it. You'll like it. I said, I'm not going to read it. And she said, take it home and read it. Just read the book. So I took the book home and I read the book. And that Monday when I came back to school, I was a reader. I could read.
Wow.
I could read anything. I started reading at the assemblies at my school. So for the next 2 years, people would call me if they couldn't make their dates to read at chapel or whatever it was. They'd call me at my house and they say, "Hey, will you go ahead and substitute for me today?" So I'm reading now in front of everybody. My point is that I overcame a lot of hurdles. And a lot of it was because I wanted to stop, but somebody, that's my friend Holly, she said, "No, read this book." And I had the courage to go ahead and read the book, and whatever happened in my brain made the connection that weekend. And it was really a weekend. So I started writing, and the members of the church, I said, "Do you guys like these stories that I'm putting out?" And they're like, "Oh, please, please keep sending them because they make us laugh or they make us think about different things." And it was just a diversion from the horrible situations that we were in with COVID. So that's actually how I started writing.
Can you talk a little bit? Well, I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about before you became an educator,
Hmm.
but based on your energy and the conversation that we had
Hmm.
prior to actually coming on air, would you mind sharing your church name and your pastor, if you don't mind?
Oh, not at all. We have a wonderful new pastor, his Reverend Dr. Kenneth Miller, and he is the senior pastor of the BB Memorial CME Church, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Oakland, California. And it's a large church. It holds about 1,500 people. The problem is COVID. So many people dropped away from church during COVID. And we went hybrid at the time. The minister who was there, Dr. Charlie Haynes, who is now Bishop Charlie Haynes, he was very good at understanding the value of media. And he was able to equip the church with the personnel, and he made changes for screens and things like that in the sanctuary, so that we were still able to hear church services on Sundays. I got to tell you, I didn't like it because I still got dressed in the kitchen and went to the kitchen and watched it on Sunday. Other people were like in the bed. It's like, no, I am not going to meet God in my pajamas. I got to get dressed and meet God. So that was already there. And when Pastor Miller came, he's a very social justice conscious minister. I had the honor of reading his dissertation because he got his doctorate while he was with us. And one of the things that he did was he trained ministers on how to make their churches the center of the community for resources that people need in the community. So if you need mental health, you come to the church and we can hook you up with people who do mental health. You need an apartment, you're homeless, you need food, you need money for your electricity. You need things. You need to talk to a nurse. You need those kinds of things. We want to make that available. But we also want to reach the youth. And so while John Ittelson, who Doctor, he's just my guru for technology, wanted me to be a podcaster several years ago, I couldn't figure out what to talk about because I don't necessarily like showcasing myself. I like to be behind the scenes and see the people that I supported get showcased. And a lot of people don't have that kind of energy, but it works for me. And so I mentioned to him, I said, if you want to get young people in this church, you need to start podcasting, and we need to have the youth learn how to podcast and then podcast to the community about things that youth want to know or the community needs to know. And now they will come to us on our days like they come to you on Wednesday to find out, okay, what's happening in the community this week, and what is the church doing in the community this week, and what are the resources that you can get from the church during this week. And he's all for it. And I think it's because you have to move in that direction. And most churches don't go in that direction. It's all about Sunday. And God deals with you Monday through Saturday. And so Sunday is just where you get to go and say, thank you, Lord. You should be saying it every day. But I'm just saying, we have to understand churches aren't just for Sunday. And if you have a church that's only on Sunday, you're going to have a church that's never ever going to thrive. So.
Amen. Amen. And I can say that. I can say amen. Amen. Before we go to our next question, I do want to let Dr. Ittelson come in and just say hello and thank him for sharing you with me this evening.
Glad to do it. And you could see Connie is shy and doesn't have much to talk about. Connie and I became partners when Cal State Teach, which was a teacher credentialing program that happened in California when there was a shortage of over 2,000 teachers because they reduced class size for the kindergarten through third grade. So there was a need to get teachers their credentials when they were in classrooms as interns. So they were learning to be teachers while they were filling the classrooms. And Connie is a faculty member. My background, instructional technology. I was the tech person. I was the one working with our course management system, developing our videos. But she was on the front line, and that's how we bonded. She didn't always believe in me very early on. She'll tell you the story, but we became partners in designing a curriculum to meet a serious need about teachers, and just not training teachers, but turning individuals into good teachers
Hmm.
who are meeting the needs of the students. And Connie and I spent a lot of time both debating and collaborating, but the goal, and Connie was really the one who was the clearest light, because my experience with K-12 education was working in my children's kindergarten class. Luckily, my son had a bonus year. So I did have 3 years of kindergarten that I learned. And when I was at Northwestern University, I did work in a school system where I recorded Sesame Street and played it back 3 times, no, 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the afternoon. So when people ask, what did I study at the university? It was Sesame Street's first year. So I did have that connection with schools, but it wasn't until Connie and I got involved in the statewide teacher credentialing program that was site-based with technology enhancement. And that was what Connie and I were always working on. It wasn't about the technology. It was about empowering the students through technology so they could become better teachers.
Right.
Fantastic. Again, thank you, Dr. Ittelson, for sharing your good friend with us this evening.
Let me just
Dr.
jump in here just real quick. When
Okay.
not Bobby, when John said we didn't always agree, when I first started at Cal State and he was in talking about using the technology, I was supporting teachers in Oakland, California. And we're talking quite a while back. And the teachers didn't have any of this technology. And the curriculum was written for teachers with this technology. And I'm sitting in this room thinking, well, they're not going to be able to do this. So I spoke up and said, this is great for your teachers, but the culture of the teacher and the places where my teachers are, they can't do the curriculum that you're writing. So I did workarounds with this with the teachers, but he would come in, and for me, he was just going wonk 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 because he was telling me something I couldn't use, and I'm like, I don't want to, that's really nice, but I'm not going to learn something I can't use. And then I went on a trip to South Carolina, and I saw these students using animation to illustrate the water cycle. And I saw 3 classes, and I saw all these kids helping all these other kids. And the science teacher taught them the information. The tech teacher was teaching them the animation. And animation has a lot of math in it because you have to know how many cells per second to make a minute and blah, blah, blah. All these kids were helping other kids. When they left, we debriefed. One of those classes was nothing but special ed kids. And I could not tell you what class that was because all of them they were all creating and using the curriculum, using the information, not just learning, not just being introduced. I talk at you, I talk to you, and I can talk with you. And most teachers talk at kids, and they don't ever have the kids be with them or to walk with them through the process of learning. So that's when I
Wow.
began to like him a lot.
Okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about. We're going to briefly just do a detour, and we're going to talk about pre Dr. Davidson before she became an educator. So tell us about that.
Well, Dr. Davidson wanted to do 3 things in life. I wanted to be in the movies, I wanted to be a model, and I wanted to be an airline stewardess. Actually, there was 4 things. I also wanted to be a lawyer. So when I was in my teen years, I was actually an extra in a movie. So check. And when I was 16, I did become a professional model, and I modeled for like 10 years. Check. But the best part was when I was this little kid watching the Mickey Mouse Club, and Annette Funicello was on an airplane as a stewardess, and she was talking about being this stewardess. And I was like, I'm going to be a stewardess when I grow up. I started interviewing being for a stewardess at 16. They wouldn't hire me, but I really wanted to be a flight attendant. And so 2 weeks before I graduated from college, I became a flight attendant. and I traveled around the
Wow.
world for 2.5 years because you couldn't get married back then. Fell in love, got married, and was forced to quit. But for 2.5 years, I lived that dream. And then I
Wow.
had to get a real live job in the real live world, and I went into corporate America, and I worked as a telecommunications consultant when AT&T was broken up, the monopoly was broken up. And that was like being in a lawyer's office. And I did learn how to write, and I did learn how to analyze, and I did learn I did not want to be a lawyer. Because it's like, no, I'm not doing this. This is the most boring thing I'd ever done. Well, I married a teacher. And every summer when I'm going to San Francisco, my husband and my daughter would be at home and they're sleeping and they're playing throughout the day. And I said, I think I'm going to become a teacher. And and I did. I quit my job. I went back to school. And at one point, my daughter was in school, my husband was getting his master's, and I was getting my teaching credential. We were all at the dining room table together in school. And
Wow.
the thing about becoming the teacher is I had thought about it years earlier when I was getting ready to graduate. And I took the NTE, but I thought I failed it. But when I was working in corporate America, I found this box that had all this old stuff in it, and I looked and I had passed it. And it was because I truly believe this. God didn't want me to go into teaching right then because I wasn't ready for it. And I saw when I became a teacher that I needed to have all that extra life experience before I
Mm.
started working with students in a classroom. Because once I became a teacher, I found my complete purpose. This is why I'm here. I'm here to help support the growth of young people. I love young people, especially high school kids, because of the fact that they're just little kids with a bigger expectation from the adults that work with them. And they want someone who sees them, who wants to have a relationship with them, and that they will learn from. I'm still in touch with a lot of the high school students that I taught over 30 years ago. And what the joy is when I see them, they're real estate agents and chefs and owners of business and their they have grandkids now. We still stay in touch with each other. They wanted to be in touch with me because they knew I saw them. And when you're seen by an adult who really wants to understand who you are and approach you in a way that makes sense to you, as opposed to the teacher who told me I couldn't write. She could have said, you know what, let's start working on these kind of skills for you. You might get a little better in this, as opposed to you just can't write, so you're stupid and you're a dummy. My job was to create instructional environments and learning opportunities for every single kid in my classroom to learn. And as they would say, Miss Davidson, I'm getting an F in your class. I said, well, yeah, that's because you didn't do the work, but it doesn't mean I don't like you. I hope you do the work. But they were aghast because they thought if I gave them an F, I didn't like them. And they were like, yeah, okay, you're right. I'm just going to use my notebook in summer school and pass summer school because I taught history. And that's what they would do. They would use that tool in summer school and pass summer school because it was easier.
Oh wow. Okay. 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 Wow. I want to take this time to reach out to those who are watching live on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and those who are watching later on the recording. Please feel free to ask questions of Dr. Davidson and Dr. Ittelson while they're here with us tonight. The Mukana link is showing in the screen right now, so feel free to come in and ask them questions. Dr. Davidson, I want to tell you that I have a similar story in terms of being told that I was stupid and other discouraging things when I was in elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
and I and I and I'll be transparent and say I internalized it and I believed it. And um, were it not for my mother, who was a force of nature in terms of not only my mother and father both just thought that there was nobody that was as good or as as great as a Mobley, and that you had the Mobleys always do their best, and there are seven of us siblings, Dr. Davidson, and all of us think that we can do anything that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And but I have a similar story in terms of what a teacher told me one time, and I internalized it, and I responded in the way in which you do when you internalize something like that. And so my last few years of elementary school, I was a terrible student. They were talking about not letting me go to middle school, all kinds of things like that. And then when I went to middle school, when I graduated, I had the third highest GPA in the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important for us to not take in those things when people tell us those negative things. I want to ask you about not even internalizing, but thinking about how in the past, you and I agree that there are two centerpieces to any healthy community, one being the church and the other being the schoolhouse. And I wondered if you would talk just a little bit about that, what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'll start with the church first, because for me, that's the easiest one. It's the easier of the two. And that's because while a church should always be a welcoming place for anybody who walks through those doors, they are not necessarily welcoming places for people who come through the doors. And creating a culture within a community of volunteers, essentially, who decide that this is a place they all want to come together on one accord, but not to become insular. So it's just them coming together and they reap whatever benefits are going to be there. A church should meet, as I said earlier, the needs of the community, and not just the religious needs of the community, but the purpose should be to meet the needs of every man, woman, and child in the community. The poor will be with us forever. They're going to always be there. But we're supposed to reach out and support the poor. We're supposed to be a vehicle that sustains them and nourishes them and provides them with opportunities. If they need to change their status, they can change their status. If they're poor and they're, for whatever reasons they're there, we're not to ridicule. We're supposed to love. So the greatest of these is love. And so that's what I think the focal point of the church is. As for teachers may not understand the power that they have. Both of us had a teacher who told us, for whatever reasons, that we were less than. And there are a lot of people in this world that have had teachers, a single teacher, tell them they are less than. Or a system that looks at you and says, because you look like this, or your mom and dad look like that, we're going to put you in a less than class. We know because there's no way in the world you could do that. Well, it was my responsibility as someone to not only educate the kids, but when I went into teaching teachers, because I have a passion for new teachers. My dissertation was on a longitudinal study of new teachers in Southern California that were in professional learning communities, and how to support them so that they could become better educators. And I mean, there's a lot of junk that went into it, because when you're getting your doctorate, you have all this research you have to do and the data. But the most important piece of data for me was identifying their conversation, to coding their conversations. And I happened to be down with my groups over a 3-year period. I don't live in Southern California. I live in Northern California. So for like 3 or 4 years, I commuted every other week to Southern California and say goodbye to my husband. And at the time, I was saying goodbye to my daughter because I had to go down to Southern California. I was with one of the teachers doing something. And one of the teachers from my group, they had met without me came and pulled me out of the classroom to tell me that a teacher in this professional learning community came in with ungraded work from their students and wanted these other teachers to critique the assignment so that the teacher who brought in the work could understand how to better teach their students, which was the whole point. Because when you're in a professional learning community, you must learn from one another. Well, I had that group the longest, and that was the first time anyone voluntarily brought in ungraded work and asked other teachers to critique what they saw in what the students were able to produce, and then give that teacher feedback on how to perhaps present this information so more students would understand it. Schools have also the ability to respond as a church in that they can have mental health. They can have places for people to come get food. It can be a place for parents to come and be educated on how to better educate, be parents, or whatever those classes might be. And we need to utilize schools for that. Tony, I'm really proud of one of the teachers in particular. I'm going to call her out. It's Dr. Sabrina Moore. I'm going to get a little teary because she worked my nerves. But she always said, I want to be a superintendent of a school system. She had come from the phone company. Well, I was also in the phone company once. So I knew that. When I had her as a student, she was always very interjected, but she had learning disabilities. And they didn't let nice things happen to her while she was learning as a student. And she had internalized those and was determined not to do those things to her own kids. So, I would have an assignment and I would go in to see her in class. And one day she said, we have this curriculum we're supposed to teach our kids. And she was teaching Black and brown children in a lower socioeconomic area of Oakland. And she happens to be an African American teacher. And she said, these kids aren't getting this. And I have this curriculum. I've been logging, doing something different with the data because I would like to do this with them instead of what the curriculum says. And I said, this is what you do. You teach the way they ask you to teach and you get that data. Then you teach the way you know that they'll learn and you get that data. You present both of the data to your principal and say, here's the data. I would like for you to give me 4 weeks of my doing my thing with these students. And if they don't progress, then I will go back to whatever the curriculum happens to be. Well, we knew it was going to work because she'd already done it for 4 weeks and it had been working. But now she had the permission because there isn't a principal worth their salt that will tell you to teach it a particular way if they see that your students are actually learning when you're doing something else. Because the goal is to teach the kids. And now she is a principal at one of the schools. When she got her doctorate, she got her admin credential, and she's at a dynamic campus where there's a high school, middle school, and elementary school. And she's the elementary school principal. And one of the teachers that I also taught was there, and she just became an administrator at her school. So I'm just really happy because we're building on that because they love those kids and they know they can do the best things for those kids because it's not about them. It's about what can we do to elevate the children we have in our classroom. So.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to go ahead and shift to talking about the Bashful Ladybug.
All right.
So you were inspired by wanting to encourage your granddaughter, and tell us about her first experience with it.
Oh, so I got it published, and I ordered a publisher's copy. And it was taking several weeks, and I was babysitting her actually at my house. And I was going through the mail, and I saw this brown envelope. I didn't know what was in it. So I opened it up, and I went, oh my God, it's here. And I had the book and I was holding it to my chest. I was like, oh, it's here, it's here. Well, the only person that was home was Vivian, and she was taking a shower, the 5-year-old. So, of course, I burst into the bathroom, pulled out the shower curtains. I go like, look, the Bashful Ladybug, it's here, it's here. And my little soapy granddaughter looks at me and like, "Yeah, okay, Grandma, what's wrong with you?" Because she doesn't really understand just yet. So later on that evening, um, I read the book to her while we were getting ready for bed. She was having a sleepover at my house, and so while we're in the bed, and I read the book to her. The book is about a little bashful ladybug that gets guided by a butterfly, and the butterfly encourages her, tells her that she's important, and that if she just puts herself out there, the other children will find that they see the value in her, and that they'll play with her, because she didn't have any friends because she was afraid to go outside. It begins with, I'm so small and the world is so big, and the whole thing happens in a garden. So as I'm reading the book, when the butterfly gets introduced, I turn the page, and my grandbaby says, "Who's the butterfly?" And I said, "Well, let's just finish the book and find out who the butterfly is." So we read through the whole book, and at the end of the book, it says that making friends takes effort, and that you can do anything when you go ahead and try, when you put your mind to it. And so we were talking about the book, and I asked her those questions. Well, what did you think? And then she said, well, who's the butterfly? And I said, well, I don't know. Who do you think the butterfly is? And she said, I think it's BB. And that's what she calls me. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet, because she sees me as a guide in her life. And that's a question that I think any parent who reads the book to their child can also ask. So who do you think the butterfly is? Because I didn't name the butterfly. The butterfly is just the butterfly. Everybody else has a name, but only the butterfly is the butterfly, because that's the spiritual guide. That's your guide. That's the person you trust. That is somebody that loves you and is going to make sure that you're safe as you're guided through life. And I'm an old grandparent because I have a daughter who decided to wait till she was mid-40s to have a baby. So it's like, let me just live long enough now so she'll remember me.
Wow.
So,
Thank you so much for sharing that.
mhm.
And I want to say to any educators who may be um, listening to our conversation tonight, I encourage you to make the purchase of the book and add it to your classroom library. And the reason why I'm saying that is, number one, this is an encouraging story that your children or your students will benefit from. And also, not that she needs any encouragement. Dr. Davidson doesn't need any encouragement to do what she's doing, but it is a way of recognizing her efforts, um, and so I am going to make a purchase, although I don't have any grandchildren or children to share it with. And it is, I've looked up the title, and it seems to be available absolutely everywhere.
Mhm.
And so I saw it on Target, Barnes and Nobles, and so I'm sure that it's available anywhere that you want to. And I want to say that I even saw that in the Apple bookstore. I believe you can get a few sample pages before you make the purchase. I believe that's accurate. And so again, I want to thank you for writing that book, and thank you for sharing this story that you wanted for your granddaughter
Mhm.
with potential other educators to add that book to their classroom library.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. We do want to talk about why teacher certification is so important in 2026. And before I even ask you or Dr. Ittelson to even speak to that, I want to tell you both that you are both failing in retirement. You are both failing in retirement. And we're going to start with Dr. Ittelson, and then I'm going to let Dr. Davidson wrap us up.
Well, I really am glad I'm failing retirement. I had a terrible role model. My father retired from the Air Force as a civilian after working 52 years. So the last 22 years of his retirement was working full time. And it's what kept him alive. And what I learned from him is that you don't have to stop caring about what you think is important and being actively engaged just because you're retired. And I could say I'm doing more things now that I'm retired than when I was working. I'm not sure it's a compliment, but a number of my friends, would say, John, you're working just as hard when you're retired as you did when you were actually not retired. I didn't know whether they were commenting on how little I did when I was working versus how much I was doing when I'm retired. But there's a freedom that you get, in the case here, Professor Emeritus, where you're not on the payroll. You don't have to go to faculty meetings, which are the most boring thing in the world, usually talking about parking issues. But you get to be involved with your colleagues. You get to reflect on the research that you did, and you help mentor other faculty members. And then you get to be more active in the community, broader than just university. So I look at retirement as the best thing you could ever do, and I should have done it earlier.
Okay. Dr. Davidson?
In my retirement, I decided to go back and become a substitute teacher because I wanted to still connect with the young people. I love young people. They give you energy. This just recently, I had an assignment where the state of California says that you have to have a certificated adult in every classroom, and a teacher was going out with a knee replacement. So when she asked me, she said, I'll do everything. I'll do the lesson plans, I'll do the grading, I'll have everything online. All you have to do is be in the classroom to take attendance. And I was like, okay, that's a perfect assignment because some substitute was going to do that. So for 2.5 months, I was with seniors in an American government class. And the joy of being in that class was first creating relationships with students. I'm not teaching the students, but I am teaching them because they're seeing me relate to them in a way that sees them. I had a chair by my desk, and kids would just sit in the chair. One young man in particular, he sat in the chair 3 times at different times. The first time was to ask me, what was it like on 9/11? The second time he sat in the chair, he wanted to know what was it like during the civil rights movement. And the third time he sat in the chair, he wanted to know what was it like in an analog world. Now, those may seem like, innocuous little questions, but those are big questions. And he felt comfortable enough to just come talk to me about my life and what it was like during those times. I had another kid that used to sit and talk politics with me. That was great. I had a girl that wanted to know about relationship stuff. That was wonderful. And then I built my own yearbook because they're going to graduate. But I only know 150 kids for 2.5 months. I built my own yearbook. And the funny part was when I brought in photographs, most of them had never really even seen a photograph that they could touch. They didn't know how to put in a photo album because they don't have photo albums. So that's what I mean. So there I was teaching kids something about the ancient days, the analog days. But I was also letting them know because they were kind of tepid about it. Towards the end, I was going to Walmart almost every single night to pick up pictures they were sending me so I could get them printed so they could put them in the book because it became important to them. And they wrote me little messages like best sub ever, or we had one group that we called the He-Man Women Haters Club, and it's that we just got along. So my whole thing is I can't retire because if I retire, then there's no purpose. And my purpose is to always engage with young people, because I can say to a young girl, and I did you know that you have leadership qualities? You actually are a very dynamic female. And I want you to know that, because I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but you are a leader. And I want you to be aware of that, because you influence people without your even knowing that that you're doing it. And so I just want you to become aware of that power you have. I said that to two students. One, when she was a freshman, she blossomed into this wonderful leader at school, and another in the class I just had. And I said, "Did anybody ever tell you that?" She said, "No, they always just tell me to shut up and go to church." I said, "Well, I'm telling you, you are a leader." And that's the other piece where I can validate a child. I can encourage a young person to be more than if somebody has told them that they could be. Just like somebody told you you were less than, somebody told me I was less than, they need to have somebody tell them you are more than what anybody can ever tell you that you are.
Absolutely. We did not get to certification.
That's a whole nother thing.
And our show, it's time. I'm down to the last question. So what's next for both of you?
I have another book in the works. It's not a children's book per se. It's more of an anime, and it's about how Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer arrests all the reindeer so he can stop Christmas, and then what happens while he's in the process of booking them and trying to delay Christmas. Because like I said, during COVID, I wrote a lot of stuff. And now I'm going back over it. And then I took classes in it. I actually took classes from the community college on writing and children's books. So I wanted to get better at it, because just because I wanted to do it doesn't mean I was any good at it. And so my whole thing is I'll be a sub for as long as my health allows me to be a substitute teacher. And I will continue to write stories and children's stories and stories about my life to encourage people, because I always like to make people laugh. You might not know it talking to me right now, but I can find the sarcasm in anything. And that's not always a good thing, but it is something that I can do.
Okay. Dr. Ittelson?
Well, Connie and I met when it was a very busy time creating this curriculum, getting some 2,000 teachers prepared to be in the classroom. But it was a very interesting time because it was a mandate by the state on how they would do funding that did the class size reduction that created a shortage of teachers. But it was a time when the internet was just coming out. So there was a direction saying we're going to use these new technologies to meet this need. So it was going to be the internet, we were going to be using video, we were going to be trying out technologies to hopefully empower the faculty to be able to teach these emergency credentialed teachers. Gee, have we ever had a new emerging technology that's supposedly going to impact teaching and education, and we need to figure out how to use it effectively? So Connie and I were saying, history may not repeat itself exactly, but it hums the same tune. So a lot of the issues that Connie and I dealt with we have this tool. We're not sure it's a hammer, a wrench, or a screwdriver, but we've been given this shiny object that somebody says is going to make teaching better. How do you actually use it? What are the best practices? What can we learn from experienced teachers that are going to change how they're doing things? I think the example that Connie talked about here, that teacher used technology. She was able to create the course, create all the content, everything that the students needed to know they could do without having that teacher there in the classroom because she was having her knee fixed. But the state required that there be a credentialed teacher. I think every credentialed teacher should be at the top of that, beyond the curriculum, how to make each student be the greatest potential human being they can be. So what a treat for Connie to have seniors, which are not the easiest people to deal with.
Right.
Hormones with feet, it's a challenging group of people. And so an adult who can see things and encourage them. So Connie and I have been spending time talking about, well, what worked well, what didn't work so well. And more importantly, Connie was resistant wasn't the right term because, it may have sounded that way a couple times when she, didn't listen to the wisdom that I was sharing. But what we did is we were able to talk. She was clearly a star in the classroom. And when she would do practice teaching with us in some of our workshops and training, she would be the third grade teacher, and then we would all role play being third graders. And we became third graders, and it was some of the best educational experience. So in our retirement, we're talking a little bit about, okay, what's happening with AI and what's happening with the technology and what are the pressures that are happening to students. And you have the issues of screen time versus non-screen time, phones in the classroom, not in the classroom, AI, whatever it is. And I'm not as worried about artificial intelligence as I'm more worried about natural ignorance. And there seems to be a lot of that around. And you only beat that by actually having people working in the fields, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, and trying to fix it. So, and we have a different perspective because our kids supposedly on their own, although your kids are never on your own, but we have time now that we could look back on what we've done and hopefully some of the wisdom that we've got of our Connie doesn't have gray hair, but you and I, Tony, we've earned these.
Yes.
And there are some societies that the wisdom of their elders is highly regarded. And I'm hoping that some of the work that I'm doing, work that Connie's doing, is proving that with age, you don't actually, you age like good cheese and good wine.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a little smelly, but it does really, really, it's satisfying.
I want to thank you both. We do have one more question. And so this question is a question I typically ask at the end of every conversation that I have. You're speaking to the world. What do you want the world to know?
Don't give up hope. There's a lot of chaos around. Don't give up hope because if you know how to I don't know exactly how to say this, but basically, if you know how to think, you can discern. And if you can discern, you can choose and you can problem solve. And things are only as bad as we allow them to be. And things are only as good as we allow them to be. And I know this is kind of philosophical, but if we give up hope, then there's no reason for me to go to school. There's no reason for your child to go to school because now we're living in, a time that's going to be dark. And I don't believe that. I believe that the children really are our future. But if we as the adults do not do what we need to do to help them understand how to problem solve, how to read, then they're going to just fall into that chaotic abyss. We have new challenges ahead of us in technology, in the world, in just living our lives. And we must come together as a community on a local level to support one another through this time. And the same thing at school. Teachers have to come together and understand it's not about you in your classroom. It's about these kids that are walking down the hall. It's about what is their future going to look like. We don't know, but at least we can prepare them with skills that'll help them problem solve and discern. I don't know. That might be a little too philosophical, but that's how I really feel about that.
Wow. I'm going to say that I don't think that it's too philosophical at all. You've given me hope because I think that I'm a very optimistic person, and sometimes people tell me that I'm naive. I'm a naive person, but I am one of those people who has had a similar life story, and I understand that who I believe in, who I trust in, still will make a way out of no way.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it does get a little discouraging. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thank you, because it's always good to hear someone else um, share that you're not alone in hoping and praying that things get better.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Dr. Ittelson?
It's hard to follow Connie, but I will say be optimistic, be hopeful, and more importantly, buy the book. It may be for little kids, but I read it and it brought a smile to my face. It made me happy, and I know I'm going to share it with my grandchildren. So get the book, read the book, and it will make your day.
And I'm gonna echo that again. I am going to make the purchase. I am going to make the purchase, and I'm asking any educator, K through 8. Yeah, you might say maybe it's not for eighth graders, but I'm going to say, yeah, put it in your library. You never know what word might be encouraging to
Mm-hmm.
someone. You may never know.
Mm-hmm.
And so let it be in place so that it has an opportunity to encourage, uplift somebody. Because sometimes we never see what we put out there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I want to thank you both for being here with me, and we'll have to have a teacher certification conversation,
Yeah.
and we'll try to make it just about teacher certification, and then maybe before school starts back up, we could get together. I don't want to impose on your summer, Dr. Davidson and Dr. Ittelson, but um, I would love to have you both back for another conversation. I can talk to you about my experience in my high school special education class, where I worked with low functioning students, and we were able to do some amazing things with iPads. That's when iPads first came out, and I
Mm-hmm.
was in that classroom for 2 years, and I was very, very happy about what we were doing in that classroom. And Dr. Davidson, I might have shared this with Dr. Ittelson. I had my classroom was actually three separate rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had one room that was a traditional classroom, and then I had two other rooms. One was like a factory or workshop
Mm-hmm.
classroom, and then the other classroom was a home environment where you could, had a kitchen and bedrooms and everything that you have in a house. And so my students and I only had 10 students, but we had a great time. And I really miss those days. And because of health issues, I had to leave the system, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to us having another conversation real soon. And I want to say again, buy the book.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you for plugging the book, but more than that, thank you for the conversation. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. Conversations with Tony Mobley. Mobley. I can't say your last name just tongue twists me forever. So I'm just going to call you Mr. Tony because I think that you are a marvelous human being. And thank you for
Well,
having
thank
me.
you. Thank you so much. And I intend for you to be able to get that name right, because I'm going to continue to interact with you, because I have your contact information thanks to Dr. Ittelson. And so
Hmm.
we're gonna talk about some church stuff too.
Okay.
Uh, we're definitely gonna do that. We're gonna talk about some church stuff. And so I want to say again, thank you both so much for being here with me today. This is Dr. Ittelson. Thank your wife, Dr. Davidson. Thank your husband so much for sharing you with me this evening. Um, you can watch Conversations with Tony Mobley on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it on our website. And I want to make a departure here. Our website is the work of Ken Jordan, who is in the UK. If you have an opportunity, I want you to go to Conversations with Tony Mobley. The reason why I want you to go to conversationwithTonyMobley.com is because Ken Jordan puts in a lot of effort in talking about each conversation that I'm going to have before I have the conversation. And the things that he put in the conversation tonight about Dr. Ittelson and Dr. Davidson, I think is worth a review. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Clark Lopez Waterman. Our current team includes Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, Mickey McAture. Thank you, sir, and thank you, team. This conversation uses Mimo Live, and we use Zoom. That makes this broadcast possible. We have conversations with real people. Stay tuned for new episodes and great conversations. Conversations with Tony Mobley. And we ask that if you have time, go back and look at the now 208 episodes of Conversations with Tony Mobley. We think you might find something that is helpful to you. Again, we want to say thank you to Dr. Davidson. Thank you to Dr. Ittelson. Thank you for being a part of our conversation today and for doing the work you do. Next week, Ken Jordan is back. He returns, and we're going to have another AI lab, and we're going to be talking about the actual website that I was created using his software. I was his first beta tester, and we're going to talk about that website. Please feel free to donate your time, your talent, or your financial gift to Conversations with Tony Mobley. We are committed to getting better, and your support makes that possible. We also love for you to join our growing community by like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube so that we can keep bringing meaningful conversations here at Conversations with Tony Mobley. We believe that when people sit down and truly talk, something powerful happens. So consider having a conversation today. It just might change everything. God bless you. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.